I want to share with you a 15 podcast that you're not listening to and why you should, okay? So basically, the most popular podcast right now, depending on the niche that you're in. So the most popular comedy podcast by far, you have the Joe Rogan Experience. JRE, fantastic, fantastic host. Joe Rogan is really, really great. So, in terms of categories, you were speaking about comedy, entertainment, interviews, okay. And so, Joe Rogan has about 15 to 20 million subscribers on all platforms. Fantastic, fantastic. You have a lot of creativity, a lot of charisma. I love Joe myself, and I've been actually following his podcast for the last maybe 15 years now because the podcast actually started in 2009, right after the Great Depression, and Joe had this wonderful idea of starting this Joe Rogan podcast. Okay, it's actually one of the most popular podcasts in the whole world. Okay, so if you're interested in 3 hour long conversations on topics like politics, UFOs, or stand-up comedy, okay, history, psychology, or psychedelics, you really want to check Joe Rogan Experience out. I mean, that's really fantastic. And this guy is really creative. He's very smart because he's able to navigate various topics. Okay, a lot of folks have heard about Joe Rogan during the last election when he invited President Trump, but Joe Rogan was was more popular even before, actually navigating the world of politics. Okay, he invited very, very smart folks over the years. And that's just what I love personally is the fact that Joe Rogan is really able to maintain a 3 hour conversation. He's able to maintain that conversation and do it over time. That's just fantastic. Fantastic. So that's the first one. So the most popular comedy podcast, the Joe Rogan Experience. Please check it out if you're interested. You will love it. Now, the most popular health podcast, I love Haberman Lab. The Haberman Lab actually is hosted by Dr. Andrew D. Haberman, a fantastic host, wonderful host, okay? And basically, the categories here are health, science, and self-help. And the cool thing is that Dr. Haberman does a great job in terms of navigating the whole world of health, the whole space of health in a very, very conversational way. Okay, so while you may think the show caters to health professionals, this podcast has become popular all around the world because there's a lot to learn from Haberman himself. His show covers mental health, optimizing performance, improving sleep, and more. So that's really fantastic. Again, check it out. You will love it. Another show I want you to listen to this year is actually the most popular tech podcast, and this is the Lex Friedman podcast. Okay, and the host is also a very, very wonderful host, Lex Friedman. And so the categories here are technology, history, and interviews. And you have millions of subscribers across all platforms. What I love about Lex Friedman is actually he has positive energy. He has great energy. He has a creative energy. Okay, and he's constantly coming every week with new episodes with new content. Lex Friedman himself is an AI researcher and professor at MIT, and he's a true expert in technology. And his podcast dives into artificial intelligence, quantum mechanics, and hidden brain functions. And he sparks deep intellectual discussions on life, consciousness, history, and philosophy. And what I love about Lex Friedman also is the fact that he is constantly sort of he's switching things around. Okay, he's not really he's not staying into one category. He really gets into several categories at once. So that's really fantastic. What's the most popular true crime podcast? Well, Rotten Mango. I mean, Rotten Mango has been has been around for a while. I love personally. I love Stephanie Sue. I mean, Stephanie Sue. You have to see her on her podcast. You have to see the kind of energy, the kind of creativity, how she's able to have a lively conversation. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful host. Okay, so the categories here are true crime, mysteries, comedy. Okay, so the most popular true crime podcast, Rotten Mango, and Rotten Mango is currently one of one of the fastest climbing podcasts on Spotify. Okay, and also again, I'm not speaking just in the states though. I'm speaking about global stats. Okay, so what sets this show apart is actually Stephanie Sue's cute, spicy, and often entertaining approach to covering all things spooky. Okay, and Rotten Mango actually deep dives into the most twisted criminal minds, cold cases, and serial killers. And it covers a lot of stories from Korea, China, and Japan. They are rarely found in similar shows. So if you don't mind Stephanie occasionally dramatizing already horrific events in her typical K drama fashion, her natural storytelling talent will certainly keep you enthralled. Fantastic. Another show I want you to think about, this is the most popular self help podcast, and this is On Purpose with Jay Shetty. Jay Shetty is also a wonderful host. I mean, I love him too, okay? So the categories here include self help, self love, mental health, and relationships. And what was really sort of fascinating about Jay Shetty is his intelligence, his creativity, his adaptability, his ability to actually have to spark deep conversations with his host about issues that everybody cares about. Okay, so Jay Shetty is actually famous for his wisdom, which he delves into deeply with each episode of his podcast On Purpose. This podcast has gained massive traction as one of the most popular self-development podcasts. So that's really good. And so what I love here is that Jay Shetty has actually interviewed personalities such as Oprah Winfrey, Gary Vee, and John Legend. So you know the kind of quality we're speaking about. Deep quality, fantastic quality. You also have the most popular news podcast, the Tucker Carlson Show. Tucker Carlson is really a wonderful host. I mean, I started watching this guy back in the days when when he was on CNN and then moved to a Fox. Okay, and he was also for a while on MSNBC. But basically, it took Tucker Carlson a lot of years. Let's say 20 years to build his own brand. What I love about Tucker Carlson today is that now his podcast is only one arm of his empire, his media empire. Can you believe that this guy actually interviewed Vladimir Putin? You know, the Russian president. I mean, whether you like the president or not, the ability to land such a high profile interview tells you a lot about the quality of the of this host. Okay, and nowadays, you Tucker Carlson has built something called TCN, the Tucker Carlson network, where he's really he's plotting his next move. So he wants to change his company into a media empire. So that's really fantastic, and growing incredibly quickly. The Tucker Carlson Show is currently the most listened to news podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It even managed to dethrone the Joe Rogan Experience as the most popular podcast in America, though only briefly. So that's really fantastic. And basically, by the way, Tucker Carlson, once considered a potential U.S. presidential candidate, remains a controversial yet incredibly influential media figure. So that's really something that I really love for him for his intelligence, his ability to navigate various topics. A fantastic host. Another podcast I want you to really listen to this year is the most popular education podcast, the Mel Robbins podcast. Fantastic host. I mean, I love Mel Robbins too. So when you think about the Mel Robbins podcast, think about education, self-help, and health. Okay, and this woman is very creative, very smart, very adaptable. Okay, and this is actually a great education podcast in the U.S. on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And Mel Robbins offers some of the simplest, most effective ways to take control of your life and change it for the better. So this is really fantastic. And by the way, she's also a New York Times best-selling author leading a female-led media company. She advises major corporations like JP Morgan Chase, Spotify, Starbucks, and LinkedIn. Okay, and her science-backed episodes give practical advice on personal development, career advancement, and how to improve your physical and mental health. So that's really fantastic. Next, if you're thinking about the most popular sports podcast, think about New Heights with Jason and Travis Kelsey. And basically, this is you have two hosts. Those are actually this is a couple. Actually, they're married in real life. And Jason just retired from the NFL. Okay, and also uh, basically Travis Kelsey is going to have her own show, if you will. Oh, by the way, uh, uh, let me just backtrack here. I was talking about Jason and Travis Kelsey, but those are not. This is not a couple. This is actually those are two hosts, two male hosts. Okay, because basically Kelsey has his own wife having also a show, so that's why. But those are two hosts. Okay, basically that really talk about sports. And what I want to say here is that Travis and Jason Kelsey are well-known American NFL brothers. Okay, so with their combined experience, there are no better hosts to share insights into the world of footballing. Okay, so that's a great show to listen to, especially if you are interested in football or let's just say sports in general. Okay, and the cool thing is that they cover all aspects of the game. By the way, if you're interested in the top podcasts you maybe listen to, I want to introduce you the most popular TV and movies podcast, and that's Nerdrotic. And Nerdrotic is actually hosted by Gary Butler. And what I love about this is that it's all about TV shows, movies, comics. And the cool thing is that this show is actually growing big time. So if you are into TV shows and comics, if you're looking for a podcast that doesn't pull punches, think about Nerdrotic. And Nerdrotic is getting attention for its unapologetic commentary on popular franchise. Okay, for example, The Rings of Power, Star Wars, the Acolyte, Doctor Who, and Marvel's She-Hulk. So that's kind of cool. And what I love about Gary is that he is a comic store owner and pop culture junkie. So labeled as a controversial figure by mainstream media, he gained a massive following on YouTube, nearly tripling or even quadrupling his viewership in under a year. So that's really fantastic. He's known for relentlessly roasting blockbuster movies, TV shows, or comic book adaptations that do not respect the lore. He has strong opinions when there are major characters or storyline changes with no rhyme or reason. Next, you have the most popular podcast for women, and this is the one that Alex Cooper has, and that's Call Her Daddy, a fantastic podcast that you should be listening to. I mean, I listen to it, even though I'm not a woman. I still listen to it. So the categories here include sexuality, relationships, and society. Okay, and that's really fantastic. So Call Her Daddy. Basically, this is a sex positive dating and relationship podcast that's becoming increasingly popular among women, but also some men. Now, the content features explicit and raunchy stories, sex advice, girl talk, and millennial culture. And so that's really fantastic. So the podcast actually started about the 2010, 2012, okay? And that's something to really think about. And basically, Call Her Daddy is a really deep conversation about issues that women care about too. It's not just superficial content here. If you're looking for the most popular history podcast, I want you to think about The Rest is History, which is hosted by Tom Holland and Dominic Sandbrook. And so the channel revolves around history, okay? And the cool thing about this podcast is that you have a lot of positivity, but most importantly, a lot of what I call contextual content. So this is actually The Rest is History is a great podcast if you are a history enthusiast or even casual listener. And more importantly, basically, this podcast is here to remind us that hardcore history doesn't need to be boring, right? So that's really fantastic. So Tom Holland and co-host Dominic Sandberg make the podcast a pleasure to listen to with their witty banner and deadpan British humor. So that's really fantastic. So From exposing the horrors of World War II to unveiling the tale of the mysterious ape man. The rest is history will keep you glued to your seat as you actually binge listen to all their podcast episodes. The most popular science podcast is definitely Radiolab. I mean, Radiolab is growing in terms of listenership. You have Lulu Miller and Latif Nasser. Those are the two wonderful hosts that we have had. So, a staple on both Apple and Spotify charts, Radiolab has been one of the most popular science podcasts for over 20 years. I mean, they're going into 25 years very soon. So, a true trailblazer in podcasting. It really launched in 2002, so it's been around for nearly 25 years. And this podcast continuously amazes its audience with thought-provoking content. So that's really fantastic. So if you think about Radiolab, I want you to think about a deeply researched show written by a team of talented producers. It's known for its cutting-edge sound design. Every episode is a deep dive into a fascinating scientific discovery, an intriguing historical mystery, or a provocative philosophical question. So that's really fantastic. So, by the way, if you've never heard about Radiolab, take a seat and listen. Its carefully crafted narratives will guide you through the most complex scientific concepts, pushing the boundaries of your curiosity this year. I also want you to think about the most popular celebrity podcast, and this is Talk Toi with Haley Welch. And Haley Welch is a fantastic host, I mean, by the way. And her categories include comedy, interviews, but also society, okay? And so while Haley Welch is not exactly a celebrity, she's definitely doing her best to become one. And she is faring pretty well so far in less than 1 month since she launched her new show. Hers is already the sixth most popular podcast on Spotify and is growing big time, okay? And so the golden haired girl from Tennessee went from actually waking at 3:30 every morning to work at a spring factory to becoming an internet sensation overnight. So that's something to think about. So after her Hawk Toi video went viral worldwide, Haley actually showed the world she has much more to offer than a 30-second drunk joke, by the way. So her podcast is still so new that it's hard to say what topics it will ultimately focus on. So far, it's been a mix of personal life stories and hilarious interviews. Think of it as a raunchier, funnier, and lighter version of Call Her Daddy. What's the most popular relationship podcast? We Can Do Hard Things. And the hosts are Glennon Doyle, Amanda Doyle, and Abby Wambach. Okay, so here you're speaking about relationships. You're speaking about self-help. Okay, and the cool thing is that this is a podcast about humanity, personal struggles, and making difficult choices that life throws at us repeatedly. And so those three hosts are really fantastic. Okay, they discuss all aspects of life, including tough topics like addiction, divorce, and loss, and with raw honesty. And the cool thing is that they're constantly learning from their show, but also improving it. So that's really fantastic. And finally, I want to share with you the most popular business podcast, and this is Money Rehab with Nicole. Okay, Nicole Pin, and so the business the categories here really touch on the business, personal finance, but also economics. Okay, and you're talking. I mean, Nicole is not really is not as known as let's say Dave Ramsey, but the cool thing here is that Nicole brings a fresher, a more personal view to this topic that a lot of folks are interested in. So that's why I wanted to include her here. Okay, and so for instance, you can have conversations about student loan cancellation and what it means for you and the economy, and also should you be quiet quitting, for instance. So that's really fantastic. So in conclusion to this conversation, I'll share with you 15 podcasts you may not be listening to and why you should. And so spoke about the Joe Rogan Experience, Huberman Lab, Lex Friedman podcast, Rotten Mango, On Purpose with Jay Shetty, okay, the Tucker Carlson Show, the Mel Robbins podcast, New Heights with Jason and Travis Kelsey. You have Nerd Erotic, Caller Daddy, The Rest is History, Radio Lab, Talk Toi with Haley Welch. You have We Can Do Hard Things, and finally, Money Rehab. Thank you so much. God bless you. I will see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.